and welcome to another episode of Laying Down the Lore of the Old World, a lore podcast in which we aim to separate our ghouls from our goblins, our snotlings from our Skaven storm fiends, and our bloodthirsters from our bloodletters, and generally ask, what's up with this Warhammer stuff? My name is Ben Crone Barber, and I know pretty much fuck all about Warhammer. With me is my co-host Christopher Crowlin Allen.
Hi.
Who knows absolutely fuck all about Warhammer.
Sure.
And my dear, slightly sleepy brother Darren.
Good morning.
Who knows so much about Warhammer, it's a wonder he has time to do anything else. After gathering online to slay some vermin in the name of Sigmar, this dichotomy between our levels of understanding became clear, and this series is an attempt to address that ignorance. You can tell Dar's just literally woke up because the pillow is still kind of pressed. The shape of the pillow is still pressed into his beard.
He's actually lying. I'm actually lying in my bed, listeners. And
the Fogarty logo is still inside of his temple.
Vicky keeps kicking me. All right, I'll whisper.
Right, well, nice segue into support there.
Banter achieved.
Sure. Big thanks to everyone that supports the show. You guys are the tits.
No, you're not.
If you would like to support the show, there's a number of ways that you can do that. You can head over to Patreon, where you can sign up for our Discord for just £3 a month and come and have a chat with us pretty much every day. Or you can pay an extra £2 a month and gain access to our bonus show, Chunks of Dar, which is basically the last 5 minutes. Well, the last 2 minutes, but for 20 minutes, twice a month.
Yeah, with questions.
With questions that may or may not get answered.
And hilarious consequences.
And hilarious consequences.
I'm surprised there's not been more consequences, if I'm being honest.
We also have merchandise and links to our affiliates. If you're into the hobby, you can just hit the Quartermaster link in the description and send us all your money. This episode also may include some ads that help us create this content for free. So the easiest way you can support us is just by letting them play fully. You just let them play, put the episode on repeat, go off and do your day, and then when you come back, there you go, you know. We've also been told by a listener called Raleigh that apparently it's really helpful if you drop us a comment in the comment section on whichever platform you're listening on. So
give us a follow, give us a like, give us a subscribe, all that good stuff. We love it.
Oh, we've finally become one of those like and subscribe people. I'm going back to bed.
It makes me. Do you know what? Of that entire support request, that's the part that made me feel the dirtiest. I didn't like it.
But it helps the algorithm, and we're all about the algorithm. So,
oh God,
subscribe to us, people.
I would rather be completely body waxed than talk about the A word.
Can you imagine the amount of wax they would have to use to get rid of that beard?
One huge strip. It looks like a bed. Darn, we know how much you like beds. Would you care to lie? I'm stuck. Fly paper.
It's like fly paper. Crow, you mentioned actually a little bit of a mention here. You two mentions.
Say mention again, motherfucker. Say mention again.
Big Kahuna Burgers. You mentioned the Skaven. You said the other day that you really missed the Skaven.
Yeah, it's been a minute, and I was just reminiscing, and I was like, I've not heard about the Skaven or what, and they haven't made much of an appearance in much of the lore that we've covered either. Do you know what I mean? Obviously, because it's not been about the Skaven, which is fair enough. I don't know. I've just got this itchy, rodenty rash in my mind.
You need a topical lotion for that.
Yeah, exactly. You know,
well,
dastardly deeds.
Yeah. Well. They will make a surprise appearance this episode, Chris.
Oh, yay.
Nice.
Or will they?
Do you remember I think it may have been the first episode that we did of this game, in episode 6, Dar mentioned their population, and he said that they were in the billions. Millions, possibly billions. And I said, would it be possible for them to be trillions? And Dar said, possibly, I don't know, he hadn't read anything about it. And then somebody posted on our Spotify that they thought we had kind of drastically underestimated what a trillion is. So I then, in a very bored and pedantic 10 minutes, calculated whether it was actually possible, and it was. But it turns out it's actually all bollocks, because our dear friend Shimmy has sent a post from a little clip from
our honorary rat representative.
Our honorary rat representative from Uniforms and Heraldry of the Skaven. Have you read that?
Oh,
Don?
yeah.
Yeah, and apparently it says, a little clip in here, it says, though vicious, a single Skaven is little threat. However, the rat men number in the billions. So there you go.
If it's in a book, who are we to argue? You know, if this make-believe species in a make-believe planet is in a make-believe book led by a make-believe Shimmy, I mean, you know, I'm sold.
Chris, this is why I love you. Trillions it is. Moving on.
Exactly. Also, is it the US trillions or is it the UK trillions? Because they're two different things
exactly.
as well.
I based my calculation on the US rather than
the UK trillions and billions and millions are now aligned with US ones.
Yeah,
we use the US ones now. Yeah.
So a trillion is now 1,000 billion? Is that right?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, because a billion, that's a lot.
Billion is a billion. Yeah.
Yeah. I can't think of any way to describe it better than a billion. Right. Moving the fuck on.
This is the type of quality content on Chunks of Dar.
Exactly.
Yeah. This is exactly what we talk about.
But you just pay for it, yeah.
Yeah.
This free taster was supplied by,
Kral, you know what time it is.
Hello, Reichland. It's time for the WhatsApp recap.
We focused our attention on the changer of ways, to Zinch, to Northern Chaos God, isn't it?
To Zinch.
Loves a bit of magic, loves a bit of change and development, never sitting still, wants some wild, crazy, out-the-box ideas all the time.
Sounds like a hyperactive child.
Yeah, man. Yeah, bit ADD, but that's cool. That's fine. And
Demon
some of his champions. Huh?
Nothing. I love you.
Okay. Love you too, babe. What champions did we have? We had Melech the Changer, didn't we?
Melech.
The Scouts. Yeah, Melech. Good old Melech, our kid. We had Acold Hellbrass, Acold Hellbrass, who just could not stop giving life against people's consent. He was just like, you have life.
Take life.
You have life. And you have life. And life was just sprouting up everywhere. And then that treacherous Egram van Horstman as well, the spellcaster who got so close to getting his hands on that good magical goodness in the colleges of magic and whatnot. But if it wasn't for those pesky Order of Light kids, he would have got away with it too. So instead, he just unleashed, what's his name, Baldros, the two-headed dragon, because, do you know what I mean?
Who's definitely evil.
Who's definitely evil. Exactly, man. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
So,
exactly.
Zinch, I think probably the Chaos God, in my opinion, when you think about it logically. Do you know what I mean? Like, he knows what's going on.
Yeah. Even with his greatly diminished power that he now has.
But even that, Ben, as planned.
As planned. Kral,
right down.
Kral's on fire.
Kral's on fire. It's just one of the community now, aren't you, Kral? You're just You're just scouring Reddit for the opportunity to throw that comment in there. Like.
As planned. And you know what they say. As planned.
So that's all of the Chaos Champions covered?
That's all of the Chaos God specific champions covered.
Right.
And that's what I like to call segue. We're going to talk about Chaos Undivided today.
Hey.
And in the next episode as well. We have talked previously about how there are a lot of Chaos followers going off the back of the Skaven numbers, I'd say there's at least 6, possibly 20 Chaos followers in Norska.
Nice.
Millions. And there are tribes that are dedicated to individual Chaos gods. So, the big 4. And we've touched on the fact that they are perhaps, all of those tribes combined are outnumbered by those who follow Chaos Undivided. So what does it mean to follow Chaos Undivided? Have you ever watched Traitors?
No.
Okay, we'll use another analogy. So,
my partner was telling me about this show, and she'd mentioned it a few times, and she kept on describing the concept. I can't even remember what it was that she described, which is why I said I have not seen that show. But it took me about 3 or 4 sessions to go, are you saying traitors? Because I swore you were saying traders. And the concept of the show that you're describing does not sound like it has anything to do with trading. Please speak properly.
Rogue Traders, isn't that like a Channel 5 mid-morning kind of like the Cook Report type thing, like busting cowboy builders?
And
the
interestingly,
Warhammer franchise.
Traitors is basically the game Werewolf on television. If you've ever played Werewolf.
Definitely not played Werewolf.
Another analogy.
You have to dilute it down a bit more, mate.
Anyway, let's steer it back to what we're actually here to do today.
So what's Werewolf like?
Darren, what's a podcast? Those tribes that follow Chaos Undivided, how do they express their worship? In one of 3 ways, in fact. So they worship all 4 gods equally, like specifically within their tribe. Another way they do it is they do that, but they slightly favor one more, but not enough for them to turn their back on the worship of the other 3. So you'll have one.
They've got their bottom bitch god.
Yes, exactly right. And having watched a Dave Chappelle comedy special, I know what that reference means. And that's the only way I know that reference, just before anyone out there. And the third way, which I had momentarily forgotten, is they worship chaos as a single entity known as the Great Beast. And their theorizing is that the 4 gods of chaos are actually 4 facets of the same being trying to work out what it is.
Love it. Love that
Cool.
A nameless Satan kind of idea.
Oh, cool.
If you know, like in our own Western history, the concept that all evil stems from an individual, from an actual individual source. That is how they view chaos. So it's almost like when they run into a chaos champion of Khorne, say, oh, this is the great beast's anger being expressed. Yeah, that kind of idea. Mr. Ben.
When they come across, not literally, followers, sometimes literally, if it was Slanesh, let's say, when they come across followers of a specific god, is there a kind of level of like, patronizing? Do they look down on them? Do they go, you haven't realized the bigger truth? You're still worshipping a one small facet of the big god. You haven't seen behind the looking glass.
I suspect that happens from time to time, but they're all worshipping the same entity. This is the thing: is that if you believe that there are no 4 gods of chaos, there are 4 expressions of the great beast, then it is the great beast being worshipped. So you're, you know what I mean?
They're one of us.
Yeah, they're one of us. They're just they've dedicated themselves to one aspect rather than to worship as a whole. So say it's referred to as the Great Beast. Also, The Great Nameless One and The Thing That Should Not Be, which is a great song by Metallica. I don't know why Metallica are in Warhammer, but here we are.
They fit. They fit in my mind. That's a fit.
Yeah.
I like that idea of the big four gods being actually quadrants, parts of one greater beast. I like that. I like the fact there's a bigger fish. Now that I've got to know the four gods a bit more, I kind of like good old Slanesh, good old Nurgle. You know what I mean? I feel like they're relatable in a way, and I feel like there is a greater power going on above and beyond.
But did you say, Dar, that Chaos Undivided followers believe that the Great Beast is trying to figure out who it is? Or it's trying to understand itself? Is that what you mean?
Yes, I think that's from reading all the sources and looking at the lore and stuff. I get that impression that it's not expressly said, but it seems to me that it's the almost like the split personality disorder that you see in the movies. It's that kind of idea expressed moment to moment for each worshipper individually. It's trying to discover what aspect of itself will best conquer the planet.
Right. Okay.
You see what I mean?
That's cool.
So the great game, the war between the individual aspects, is the great beast trying to work out which bit will conquer which bit, which bit is best for conquering this area here, or for this long-term plan, or.
This is great. I love the idea of a major entity having an existential crisis.
Yes.
With that concept, I think we're going down a rabbit hole here then. Is that to say that the great beast then defines and is the creator of the big four traditional chaos gods, or is it still the human emotion that manifests it? Does the great beast still have to rely on the human condition in order for them to go, right, now we've got murder and rage, now we've got despair and rebirth, and now we've got change? Am I making sense?
You are making sense, and we will touch on that kind of soul influence, let's call it. It's the human personality writ large in the realm of chaos, is I think what you're
I love a bit of philosophical banter. Yeah, I love it. Okay, go.
So, no, we're not going to touch on it now, but we will touch on it shortly, because humans were not the first apple of Chaos's eye. They were not.
The plot thickens.
Became the favoured kind of subject of the forces of chaos. There was another race before that, and we're going to talk about
badgers.
Ben
knew it all along. He knew it all along.
Oh God! I thought you said. Yes. I thought you said vadges. I was like, what?
Well,
no. Moving on.
It's a chicken and egg situation.
No.
Which came first?
Badgers are just badgers that can vote.
Yeah.
Nice.
The suffrabadgers, yeah.
The suffrabadgers, exactly.
That was suffrabadgers, yeah.
Suffrabadgers.
So, at times, the great beast, the great one. Now, let us be clear on this. The followers of Chaos Undivided don't all think that the great beast exists. It's
what a load of
because there are, but there's a significant number of tribes, of Chaos tribes, under the guidance of shaman and warlocks and sorcerers and such, who do refer to the great beast. And the great beast does express itself in terms of champions. So we have, like Slanesh will have Sturkar or Sexy Sigvald that you guys liked a little bit too much.
Hot.
And then, of course, each other god has their own favoured champion. the favoured champion of the great beast of chaos undivided is the ever-chosen. That is the ultimate expression of an individual representing all of chaos and championing all of chaos. And Archeon, who we'll discuss next episode, he is the most championist champion of all four gods. So Archeon is favoured by Khorne more than a Khornate champion. Because Archeon is the expression of the undivided will of chaos, which has been wrapped up in this name, the Great Beast, or the Nameless One. So, Mr. Ben.
Does Archeon believe, does he know, does he have a greater understanding of the true nature of the Chaos Gods and or the Great Beast than the rest of the Undivided followers? Does he refer to it as the Great Beast?
I'm not sure he refers to it as the Great Beast because I've not read the Archeon novels. I would suspect he has a very kind of individualistic understanding of chaos, but understands the nature of all four gods and thus perhaps has a wider view on their role within chaos as a whole.
Right.
That's not a great answer to your question, but hopefully that's an answer.
It's an answer.
It's
better than the one I would have come up with.
This constant struggle, we've talked previously about how Slaanesh and Khorne are diametrically opposed, as are Nurgle and Tzeentch. When the Great Beast, we'll keep calling it the Great Beast, focuses its attention on a single champion, or at the very least sets aside this mad internal kind of psychological struggle it has, this kind of war of attrition between its various natures, when that internal struggle dies down, is when these great invasions of chaos armies happen. Like the Great War against Chaos, but also the Storm of Chaos. You remember that that invasion that didn't happen, that we spent a lot of time talking about? But also under the banner of the Ever-Chosen, every kind of chaos invasion of the old world and the new world, new evil Canada and stuff like that. That only happens when effectively the Great Beast focuses on what it wants to do, which is to conquer the entire world, rather than work out what's the best way to conquer the world.
Right.
If you see what
it's
I mean.
the action phase rather than the planning phase.
Exactly right. Yeah.
Right. It's just like, put the overhead projector and the whiteboard away. We know what we're doing. We're going over here to kill these guys.
In terms of power, it is fairly straightforward for champions to become champions of Chaos Undivided. It's just the bar is a little higher because you have to kind of meet the background radiation level of all four gods to get ahead on the great path.
Sounds like one of the more challenging PSN achievements. Do you know what I mean? Yeah.
Oh, it's definitely a platinum. It's definitely a platinum.
Yeah. It's definitely definitely platinum. Yeah.
And so there are a great many champions of Chaos Undivided. In general, this is a sweeping generalization, they are slightly less powerful than champions dedicated to a single god, but perhaps that's offset by the fact that while a champion of Khorne will be incredibly effective in battle, they're perhaps not the greatest strategist, or perhaps, they've
got
their
funny
tactics
voices.
right, I'm going to kick a head in. So it's
Can't help but snigger when they laugh, when they talk to you.
So the champions that are dedicated to a single god are more focused, and that focus comes at the price of all the other three aspects of the Great Beast. So the champions of Chaos Undivided are great all-round Chaos champions, if you see what I mean. They are more effective. Mr. Chris.
Of Khorne hates the use of magic in any form whatsoever. So how would
Yeah.
a champion of Chaos of Undivided or a Chaos Undivided champion wield magic? Would they wield magic? Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
Wherever there's a conflict between the way of worshipping gods and following gods, what happens in those points where the ideology conflicts with one another?
There are many armies in Warhammer where there are champions of Khorne and chaos sorcerers in the same army, but they'll be in different parts of the camp. If you see what I mean.
Right.
The-
Okay.
I mean, if a Chaos Undivided champion, a champion of Chaos Undivided, could
Yeah.
they use, for example, magic
While
even
chopping
though-
a head off.
Yeah, do you know what I mean? Khorne penalizes any of his followers using
Oh,
magic.
I see what you mean. Yes, sorry. There are no constraints on champions of Chaos Undivided.
Okay.
Because that would be focusing too much on one aspect of the Great Beast and not the Great Beast as a whole.
That's a compromise that's made, basically.
Yeah,
Yeah, okay.
Mr. Ben.
Would it be that you said that the bar was a lot higher for them. Would it be that what Crowd just mentioned might be the cause of that? Because obviously if they're undivided, they can use all four kind of aspects. And if they used magic on the Zeech side, obviously their favor with Khorne might go down slightly. So they then have to kind of double down efforts in terms of blood for the blood god, skulls for the skull throne. So they'd have to cut off twice as many heads as a normal Khorne warrior in order to kind of rebalance the scale. And so the dot, as it were, is kind of moving closer. It's constantly moving closer to one god or another, but the overall effect is undivided. Does that make sense?
Reminded me of the old DVD logo that bounces around.
Yeah, The mean is the center.
I mean, the short answer is yes. You're going to find, though, that chaos sorcerers don't necessarily, they acknowledge and respect Khorne, but they don't worship Khorne. They understand the desire for death, murder, and blood, but their whole reason, their kind of mission on these armies is to channel the winds of magic for the greater good of the chaos force.
Right.
So it's a more of a kind of, what do they call it, a helicopter view, or I don't know what the correct term is, where you're taking it exactly, where you're taking in the whole kind of reason for why this army is moving and what does the army miss. Okay, so we're a Chaos Undivided army, but we're a bit low on magic. Let's get some tribes associated with Zeech into the force. And then, you see what I mean? So it's kind of modular at some level, where they can plug in the bits that they need. And that's why Archaon in the Storm of Chaos had, he had 5 main lieutenants. He had Crom, who was the Chaos Undivided lieutenant, and then he had 1 each from the 4 Chaos gods. So that was an army. It was an army dedicated to Chaos as a whole, but it did have significant portions of it which were dedicated to a single god, led by that god's champion.
So the balance isn't so much in the individual; it's across the body.
Exactly right.
Of people.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Or cool. The great beast, you might call it, Ben.
That's exactly, Chris. Points to Chris. You can have 1 point, Ram. Well done.
You know what? He's going to give me that.
I'm going to give you that.
You'll remember that Chaos Champions kind of record their deeds of their lives, either for when they're mostly for when they ascend to demonhood, on the site of where they ascended, on these great big granite slabs, the monoliths, the Chaos monoliths, and how there are various different types. Well, there's 5 kind of mainish types related to Chaos Undivided and then the 4 Chaos Gods. So Nurgle's one will be, a big stone monolith, but it'll have weird kind of flesh growths and disease pockets on it. Tzeentch's will be made of like weird crystals or mist that's kind of hardened. Khorne's will be bronze or made of just a pile of skulls hammered into the shape, that kind of idea. The Chaos Undivided ones tend just to be stone with a big 8-pointed star carved into it on the top or somewhere on it. But there's an odd respect paid to Chaos Undivided's monoliths. And I think this touches on the aspect, but also the chaos, the warriors of chaos society as a whole. So a Khornate warband will defile monoliths of Slaanesh and will destroy them. And the same for Nurgle, they'll deface monoliths of Tzeentch and vice versa. All Chaos followers will respect the monoliths of Chaos Undivided. They won't destroy them. They won't damage them. And indeed, in some cases, they'll leave offerings of armor or bodies or. And so that should give
bodies
you an
in
idea.
armor.
Bodies and armored bodies. Yeah. Chaos Undivided. It's very existential at some level. In terms of troops, they have access to all of the non-Chaos God specific troops, but the real kind of signature unit is this army called the Swords of Chaos, which is an army of minor Chaos champions dedicated to Chaos Undivided, and they are Archaon's kind of honor guard and vanguard. So they are originally in the lore, they were pitched as a set of knights, Chaos Knights, but that has been expanded to include Chaos Warriors as well. So cavalry and infantry. But they're all kind of followers of Archaon more than they are followers of any of the Chaos Gods. They will respect, obviously, the different 4 Chaos Gods, and they will have talisman and amulets that kind of reflect the individual's view of, the kind of general primacy of the 4 different aspects, but they all follow all 4 to some extent.
Oh yeah, I'm quite enjoying these guys, actually. I thought they were going to be a little bit beige, a little bit non-committal, but actually...
Yeah, exactly. That's why they speak to me. I can be like, cool, I don't need to make a decision, do I? Okay?
Yeah.
So
it's the foot in the back door chaos faction.
Yeah, exactly.
No, not foot up the back door, Crypto. That's what you're thinking
of. Good afternoon. Please take your seat. Now, you are here to interview for the Chaos Undivided Corporation. My name is Judith, and your name is...
Valkyrak the Skullfucker!
A pleasure to meet you, Mr. Valkyrak. Thank you for joining us today and for your application to join our organization. Now, let's start with a little background. Who do you currently work for?
The Blood Guard!
Excellent. And how long have you been with them?
Eternity!
That long, huh? Wow. Well, that's the kind of commitment we value at CUD. And what exactly do you do for your current employer?
We scour the fated place to drink the blood of our foes!
So resource management. Interesting. Those assets aren't going to collect themselves now, are they? So what attracted you to our organization? Wonderful. Well, that is our speciality, so you've come to the right place. And finally, where do you see yourself in 5 years? Well, that's encouraging, dear. Sounds like your values are very much aligned with ours. Well, Mr. Valkyrak, I'm pleased to say we'd love to have you join us. Welcome aboard.
Thank you.
See you Monday.
Goodbye.
So we touched earlier, or Chris raised the point about the humans. Is that why Chaos loves humans so much? Let us discuss how humans became the bow of Chaos, or the Great Beast, although it is tangential to this next section. We talked previously about dragon ogres. Do you recall dragon ogres who entered into a deal with the Chaos gods for effective functional immortality?
They have the continuous rotating thing of skulls, don't they?
The thing of skulls, of bone,
which makes them immune to chaos when you're in that kind of little bubble. Right?
Yes, that's right. Yeah, and they are immortal as well.
Yeah, and they love a bit of lightning up the ass.
Zap. Love a bit of lightning. Zap. Let us turn our gaze with his head to the origins of the world. So
let's rewind.
The old ones arrive on the fated place. The scientific name for the fated place is Malus. So Mallus. So that's the difference between Earth and Terra. It's the fated place and Malus. As we mentioned previously, it was already inhabited by various races of various intelligences.
And things were fine.
And then the space toads fucked it up for everyone. Mm-hmm. You'll recall that there were the old ones influenced the world both in terms of its general biomes, but also moving it closer to the sun. And then they raised up the lizard men. So you had the Saurus warriors, the big hulking lizard man warriors, and the more nimbler and smaller skink warriors. And they instituted pogroms against races that they didn't like, or races that they didn't see a future for.
A pogrom? What's a pogrom?
Pogrom is like a purge. They purged out a specific section.
Sounds hilarious. It doesn't seem purge-like.
Pogrom.
You've been
do you think that
pogromed.
was the? Do you think that was the etymology of the popular '90s kids toy Pogs?
Pogrom.
Was to purge.
Pog for short.
To purge your enemies with Pogs.
Purge discs.
I'm going to do a little callback here. Shut up, Ben.
Nice. Actually, wrong series. So in your place.
So the lizardmen armies wiped out all but 4 of the races that the old ones didn't want. Dragon ogres were one of these races, as were dragons. We then had the sky titans. These were intellectual giants, but also physically giant. And these were the ones that lived in the mountains of Morn, or rather, they became the kind of precursors to the race of giants in Warhammer. And we will discuss them at more length when we look at the Ogre Kingdoms. The final race that the lizardmen desperately tried to wipe out were
the Skaven.
The Fimir.
Oh, God.
The what?
No.
So, the Fimir. Do you remember the Fimir? Good old happy Fimir.
With the old camps we don't talk about.
Yeah,
exactly.
The camps we don't talk about. Yeah. So,
God,
wow. Okay.
So,
fucking hell.
Despite the old one's best efforts, they could not wipe out the Fimir and the Dragon Ogres, and they really wanted to get rid of those two specifically because even before the establishment and collapse of the polar gates, these races were already chaos aligned in terms of their natures fit perfectly in with what chaos wanted in terms of followers.
So chaos was operating already, maybe to not the same level. Yeah,
exactly right.
It was still in existence as we know it, just at a very lower, muted level. Okay, fine.
Yeah. So when the polar gates collapsed, the Fimir enjoyed enormous favour by the Chaos Gods. So they were the preeminent race that the Chaos Gods gave gifts and rewards to in terms of for their worship and such. This continued for several millennia, with the Fimir gaining more power until the ascension of the human race. The gods found the humans way more entertaining, simply because there was a level of emotion within humans that wasn't found in Fimir. So the Fimir are dour and kind of bleak and very pessimistic, and don't really take pleasure in anything other than bloodshed and torture. So generally mean. They're meanies. I think that's probably
you can't play as much with that. You can't have as much fun.
Yeah, Mr. Tentacle.
Can you just give us a brief jogging of the memory of what the Fimir looked like and like how numerous they were and where they were in the world?
Okay, so at this time, just before they lose the attention, not the favor, the attention of the Chaos Gods, there were many, many millions of Fimir around the planet, all over it. They live in bogs and swamps and marshes, those kinds of areas. In terms of their look, they are bipedal, somewhere between the size of an orc and an ogre. That's their kind of range. Oh, wow, they are in kinds of shapes. They look like slightly overweight people with muscly kind of legs but spindly arms. They look kind of odd. They have a smooth kind of conical head which points to the front, with their mouth kind of splitting the narrow bit of the cone, and they have one cyclopean eye in the middle of their head. Some of them have a mild kind of crown of thorns or crown of bone on their head, but by no means all. And they have a long tail, which is either smooth or ends in a bony blade or a club.
Wow. Okay. Yikes.
What I'll do is...
I just imagined when you said they got like a conical head. Imagine like Steve Martin in Coneheads.
Yeah, but imagine the cone is to the front. They look like, the plague doctor kind of weird cone crow face.
Oh, I see. Okay, like almost like a beak kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Right.
Before the Chaos Gates, they worship chaos, but they didn't fully grasp what it was. But they did discover how to summon demons. And so they summoned demons into the real world, which is why the lizard people and the old ones wanted to destroy them, because they were bringing chaos into the planet.
Right. Okay.
Shitting on their own doorstep, they were.
Exactly right. So their ultimate goal is to weaken the ethereal veil that separates the real world from the realm of chaos. So they want to make real world hell, effectively.
God, that old chestnut. How unoriginal.
How unoriginal. What a bunch of pricks.
Yeah, exactly. No wonder they didn't make it. Such a nebulous goal. Where do you even start with something like that?
Probably summoning demons, Van.
You find the scene. Let's find the great zip.
Yeah. So their numbers start to reduce as soon as the god's favor disappears. And somewhere along that path, somewhere between the collapse of the polar gates and the end of the War of the Beard, female Fimir largely disappear. So there's only a handful of female Fimir within the race, and all of them are magic users. So they are in fact led by witches, for want of a better term. The Mearg? Mearg!
Meargies.
I sound like the what's it, the announcer on SNL? Me art! And those leaders, the witches, they can have children, and in general will have a lot of kids, almost exclusively male. Every now and then, it'll give birth to a daughter, and then that daughter is grows up a little bit, is given some mild training, and then is kicked out and goes off to form the start of another Fimir clan.
Right.
They operate in clans.
So it's a matriarchy?
It is a matriarchy, yes.
Wow, okay, cool.
It's a brutal matriarchy.
I don't know why I was saying cool there. It's not cool. It's very, very uncool.
There's very little about the Fimir that's cool.
Yeah.
And so, as I say, they're striving to weaken the barrier between the mortal realm and the realm of chaos. And they slowly fade over those 4,000 years in terms of their numbers. They've drastically reduced down to just several 100,000. And after the War of the Beard, when the old world was largely abandoned by the High Elves, remember the High Elves withdrew to Ulthuan, and the dwarves went back to their dwarven holds under the mountains. The Fimir migrated and settled in the northern section of the wasteland next to the Empire. So then, from another podcast, if you make a fist with your thumb at the side, so the main fist is the Empire, this little chap over here is the wasteland.
Okay, yeah.
So wasteland is, as you look at a map, it is to the left of the Empire, and it's where Marienburg is. It's where Marienburg blossomed. The Fimir began slowly transforming the kind of lush, temperate terrain into bogs and moors through their use of magic and redirecting and physically redirecting rivers and ultimately that area led them into conflict with another race associated with chaos, the Skaven. And so what we're talking about now in terms of the Skaven is roughly 100-ish years, maybe 150 years after the Great Machine. Do you remember the Great Machine that split open the various mountains and tectonic plates of the world, causing the downfall of the dwarves? They're expanding out of Skaven Blight now, and they're running into, in this instance, the Fimir. And they have an absolutely devastating war with tens of thousands on each side being killed over the course of this war. And while the whole thing is exacerbated by both the Fimir and Skaven using magic. So the Fimir are summoning up bogs and marshes, but also demons. Their individual demons or small units of demons are being manifested by the Fimir magic users. And the Skaven are using warp technology and warp fire, but also their own kind of rat rodent-based magic. And so the entire region turns into effectively, I think the nearest analogy we would have is the Somme. You know, that kind of churning sea of mud.
Meat grinder.
Exactly right. That's what's happening. And it's a constant offensive over a few decades. And you see the Fimir reduced drastically again in numbers. And they're now into maybe 100,000. They've lost 2/3 of their race. In the conflict with the Skaven alone, and the Skaven have lost similarly large numbers, but not in proportion, because we know there are now officially billions.
Brilliant. Thank you, Shimmy.
At some point in the war, there's some combination of magic used at the same time by each side that causes a cataclysmic set of seismic upheavals and kind of magical corruption, and destroys most of the strongholds of both races, but churns up the land even more. So you've got this kind of weird, almost cinematic kind of idea of huge pillars, shoving up through the ground, and ground being twisted 45 degrees, and mud and all this kind of stuff going on. So it's a real hellscape.
Sounds like the film 2012.
Yeah, exactly. It's like when Los Angeles collapsed. It's that kind of idea, that kind of scale, but in a rural setting, a rural, muddy, sommy a sommy hellscape. That's going to be fun when someone in our Discord listens to this. Hi, Sommy.
Sommy.
And then the Skaven retreat completely and bypass and go on and build their vast underway empire. The Fimir retreat back to their surviving strongholds and basically watch the clock as humans expand up through the various regions and come to conquer the empire. And you see the birth of kind of Bretonnia, the birth of the empire, and the ownership of the wasteland being claimed by the empire. And indeed, one of the elector counts as well comes to rule the wastelands.
It's quite tragic, isn't it?
It is quite tragic. Couldn't happen to a nicer group of bastards.
Exactly.
So as I say, the Fimir are now a kind of dwindling and reclusive race, rarely leaving
endangered
their lairs, exactly right. And they only leave kind of around dawn and dusk, kind of an hour either side of those is when they raid out for food and for slaves. As I said, they're led by the Miarg, who is their witch leader, who is always a magic user. There's then a group of nobles called the Fim nobles. Who have their
noble Fimirs, are we talking?
Yes, noble Fim is what they refer to themselves as, the Fim nobles. Okay. These nobles have then a kind of hierarchy under them where they have their elite bodyguard, elite troops called the Fianna Fim. And then you have Fim warriors. And then you have a caste that makes up the largest proportion of the Fim culture are called the Shearl, and these are the slaves, the workers, the grunt class of the Fim race. Mr. Chris.
These Fim slaves, are they Fimir themselves that are just like the lowest of the class, or are they other races? They are Fimir. Okay, yeah. From other tribes, or something like that?
No, it's from their own tribe. They will kill slaves from other tribes. The entire kind of design of the Fimir culture draws heavily on the kind of heroic Irish mythic cycles. So they are effectively the Fomorians, which is the Irish kind of sea giants, sea monsters that plague the Irish heroes of the Tuatha Dé Danann. So these are the baddies of the Irish myths as a race within Warhammer.
Again, not cool. Don't know why I'm saying that.
Cool, but not cool.
yeah.
Cool.
Concept, yeah. Perhaps not even the concept is cool.
Yeah.
They are viewed as, by most people who experience them or know of their existence, as a mix of human and demon. That's how they're viewed. And that's largely correct. Because as we've mentioned previously, because they only have one female per clan, they still need to be able to repopulate their numbers, keep their numbers up, and to do so, they kidnap females of human or elf, I think, races to use as breeding stock to replenish their numbers. Yes, God. And so the idea that they're part demon is justifiably earned, I think, this idea that they're totes evil.
Yikes.
They're also somewhat slightly demonic in nature, because a wizard who knows the correct spell can actually summon Fimir warbands to the battlefield.
Huh?
They can be They can magically appear and fight on your side if you can control them. And the way you'll know that there are Fimir nearby is everything suddenly becomes misty and foggy.
And all the women disappear.
All the women quite rightly run away.
Yeah.
They don't like sunlight. They exist in a perpetual state of twilight through the use of various magical amulets and items that produce a mist around them when they move. So in terms of the game, when you could feel them back in 3rd edition, the Fimir unit was encased in mist, so there was a negative modifier to try and shoot at them and stuff as they moved around the battlefield.
That was represented on the tabletop by just a massive clump of cotton wool. Just boop. What's under that cotton wool? Oh no, don't worry about it. It's just weather. It's just weather.
So, in terms of their culture, it's clan-based, as I've mentioned, led by the kind of witch queen of the various clans. They are oddly honor-based, so they take personal honor very seriously, but only ever consider other Fimir of an equal or higher rank, as worthy of any kind of, we'll use respect, but it's kind of grudging, if you see what I mean. There's constant grumbling in the Fimir clan. They are, as listeners who have seen the show notes, they are an odd combination of orc and very smooth lizard person, and range in skin tones from a kind of yellowish grey to green to a kind of buff tan in terms of skin tone. They're very pointed snouts and fangs and have a single kind of really evil, baleful eye. All of the Fimir have, to some extent, the capacity to see the winds of magic. They are an inherently magical race, but really it's only the Fimir or it's the Miarg or the Dyrach who are the male magic users. They have witch sight, so they can see beyond just the kind of faint touches of the winds of magic in the landscape. They're able to actually harness the magic. Because they are kind of honor based, they do have an institution sort of similar to the Dwarven Slayers. A noble who has been wronged, or a warrior who has been wronged or who has failed, can be ejected from the clan, and they go on what's called a death quest. So very similar kind of notion to the...
Sounds fun.
to the Dwarven Slayers, but it's incredibly individualistic. This Fimir will become, if possible, even more grumpy, and will then move on to try and seek death at the hands of a kind of worthy adversary. But it's always individuals, and they never return to a clan. There's never a redemption story. They just simply die out in the wilds fighting against enemies. And the kind of rule of thumb is, if the Fimir in question has a banner on their kind of strapped to their armor, they're on a death quest. And so,
cool.
Yeah.
So kill them.
I like the way you went, cool, but not cool.
Yeah, but not really that cool.
Yeah.
Okay. You know they're on the death quest because they have a big orange mohawk.
Which they will have scalped from a dwarf. Yeah.
Yeah, just super glued on with the skin. Like,
Like, yeah.
Gross.
They just wear a sandwich board. Like, I'm on a death quest. All right, mate.
Yeah.
All right. No need to
So,
fucking flex it. Like,
while they are isolationists, that is not to say that they don't have a capacity to ally with other races. And the other races they ally with most commonly are the orcs and goblins, and the dark elves. The orcs for pure from the love of destruction, and the dark elves for the dark magic and influence of chaos that the Fimir are seeking.
And I guess the abduction and slaves side of things.
For the dark elves, yeah, certainly. And the orcs are slave traders as well. Those cultures knit kind of nicely. In terms of religion, they were once the apple of the eye of the chaos gods and are now no longer. And the Fimir are a cautionary tale of what happens when chaos kind of gets bored of you and is indifferent to you to the extent where you're not all instantly chaos spawn and they move on.
Wow.
So chaos didn't dump the Fimir, they just ghosted them. If you see what I mean.
Right.
Yeah. So much more painful. So much more
painful.
Closure. Just no closure. No closure.
No closure at all. So the Fimir are still considered a chaos race. They are still hunted by the Slan and the Lizard Men. They protect themselves with, by hiding, effectively, by concealing. They do worship now, no longer worship chaos gods. They worship certain greater demons who have, over the generations, over the millennia, allied themselves with the Fimir because they're pretty solid fighters. And certainly very good raiders. They do worship an entity known as Balor of the One Eye, Balor of the Evil Eye, who is represented as a giant Fimir whose eye is droopy, and it takes several Fimir a good bit of effort to raise the eyelid, which then it kills anything it sees. And so that's the lore of Balor. But as with almost every other aspect of the Fimir, it's sort of faded away to history. They're a race that has been left behind, which highlights
by Games Workshop.
Yeah, rightly.
Yeah.
A race that's been left behind not only by their authors but also by the chaos gods. And so they are really the cautionary tale of the fickle nature of chaos, and especially chaos undivided. When your entire race worships the great beast and the great beast bores of you and runs off for a younger, nicer wife. Then
more exciting.
Not so great, the old Fimir. They do have an origin myth tied to the Isles of Albion. So they believe there is a large obsidian fortress on a kind of craggy pile of rock just right at the edge of the western edge of the coastline of Albion, called High Brazil. And they believe that's where their race originates from. There are a significant number of Fimir in the Isles of Albion, so there's some truth to that. But as I said, as with everything about the Fimir, it's
vague.
Faded and vague. Mr. Ben,
is that Warhammer Isle of Man?
There is a Warhammer Isle of Man, but it's called the Isle of Wights. Wights. Mr. Ben, I'm going to regret this.
Is there a Warhammer version of the Isle of Wight?
Yes. The Isle of Man.
M-A-N-N.
Love it.
So Fimir there, the cautionary tale of Chaos Undivided. And that,
Wow.
ladies and gentlemen, is our episode for today.
Oh,
Lads,
smokes.
thoughts?
Fimir. That was a surprise thing. I didn't expect to hear about
Yeah.
those horrid little critters again. What surprised me about them is I
like
assume
them.
they were
What?
quite. You know me. I like anything you talk about on this fucking episode.
Not their actions, Darren, just who they are as people. What?
Exactly, what they represent. No, not what they represent. They come across as Skaven-like, kind of maybe like hive mind, strength in numbers, a horde type thing, unruly. But you surprised me by saying, well, there are Fimir nobles and there's a hierarchy and things like that.
Yeah.
When you said like a noble Fimir, I was just like thinking these kind of ragtag, fleshy, lizardy-looking things with monocles and top hats. What does a noble Fimir look like?
Have you seen the kind of the notions of Celtic or Gallic warriors? You know, the ones that fought Rome in history.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah?
The Gauls. Yeah. They're in all the Asterix comics, aren't they?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Stripy trousers.
So
yeah. Okay.
That's the underlying cultural source for the Fimir in terms of their social structure. So nobles simply means the leaders, the warlords.
Not the aristocracy. The word. No. Word. I can't pronounce it.
Yes.
Hold on. I just said in the Asterix books, isn't Asterix a Gaul?
Yeah.
Asterix the Gaul.
Okay. Yeah, well, there you go. That'll be why.
Oh, it was Obelisk. Sorry, Asterisk and Obelisk. Obelisk wore the stripy trousers and had the man pigtails.
Yeah.
Obelix.
In that picture you sent, Dar, the Fim Noble looks like it's wearing the same as the Fim Warrior, but just one strap instead of two on that weird shield thing it's got. It doesn't seem to be dressed particularly differently.
It's a sketchy sketch, so, you know.
The guy, the large one in the center of the image is a Fim Noble.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
That's what a Fim Noble looks like, yeah.
Right, okay. Cool. So,
and they're bodyguards, I see.
I thought that was great. I wasn't expecting to hear more about those guys. I think we had decided that particular topic was verboten and we would not be returning to it.
I thought we'd compartmentalized and park that into a dark corner of my mind. Yeah.
Kral was, it was a tough edit. We had to make some choices, didn't we?
Okay, we've only been live for like 5 episodes. Do we cancel now?
Do we want to be that podcast that talks about that thing? No, we don't. We'll move swiftly on. No, I was surprised to not hear more about the actual the human undivided
we've talked
clans,
about those, though. We have given them a lot of love.
Yeah, I know, I suppose that's right. Yeah,
to some extent, that's going to be covered tangentially within Archeon and then also within when we talk about the tabletop.
Gotcha.
You'll see a lot of that reflected within the units that you can field.
Right. Yeah.
People don't. I mean, people are free to play whatever races and factions they want at any time. Do you see Fimir minis on the tabletop very often these days? Are they?
No, they haven't. They haven't been made for like 30 years.
Right.
And if somebody does rock up to a tournament with them, everybody's like, "What's this guy all about?" You get shunned. He or she, or they get shunned. Yeah, and rightfully so. Because if you play Fimir, you're a bastard, basically.
Well, I mean, you're getting on your high horse, but they were one of the baddies in the original version of Hero Quest, Ben. So how does that make you feel?
That does make me feel like I want to play Hero Quest again and beat their asses. Yeah,
you're just firing me up, bro.
Although I've been playing it with Priya, and she's decided that I'm too bossy while we play, which.
That's weird. I wouldn't have thought that.
I knew you were going to jump on that, Dar. Just you bastard.
I knew you were going to be like that, he said, bossily.
Yeah. Are you one of those backseat players? You're always trying to play on people's behalves, like Tristan, our beloved, dear friend Tristan. He loves to play your game.
Yeah. She'll be like, okay, I'm going to do this. And I'll be like, okay, you could do that, or you could do this. Which one do you want to do? And then she's like, why do you always do that? And so the last couple of games, I was like, right, I'm just going to shut the fuck up. You're team leader. You tell us where to go. And actually, it was a very freeing experience. So I think
yeah, for both of you.
For both of us. Oh dear. Fuck how shit I am at team sports. Right, well, I guess we've got to wrap up then.
All right.
All right, that's all from us. Thank you so much for listening. Details and imagery for the topics we've discussed in this podcast can be found on our website at layingdownthelore.com. We also have all our previous episodes on there, release schedules, and merchandise. Again, if you're keen to support the show, just click on the Quartermaster link in the description and give us all of your Fimir, what would their currency be?
You don't want to know what their currency is.
They're Fimir redacted. We'll be back again soon, displaying just how just how much Chris and I detest the Fimir. And until then, goodbye.
Farewell. Ciao for now.
Bye.